Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
You know that feeling when you're standing at the edge of a cliff and you can either jump or turn back? That's exactly where I was sitting in Mikhail Volkov's office that gray October afternoon. The cigar smoke was so thick I could barely breathe, and his gold rings caught the light every time he moved his hands across that mahogany desk. I hustled for 6 months to get this meeting, begged every contact I had, borrowed money I didn't have, and bled my savings dry just to afford the right clothes and the right pitch deck. My dream of opening Salt Lake City's most exclusive nightclub was dying a slow death, and Mikhail was my last hope. "I'll fund your nightclub," he said, his Russian accent thick as honey, for 50%. My stomach dropped to my shoes. 50%? I'd worked 3 years developing this concept, scouting locations, building relationships with suppliers and artists. This was my baby, my vision, my everything. "That's not negotiable?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. His grin widened like a predator who'd just cornered his prey. "My associate will clarify terms." The door opened with a soft click, and that's when she walked in, Bailey Campbell. I'd seen beautiful women before, but Bailey was something else entirely. She had legs that went on for days, wrapped in a pencil skirt that hugged every curve. Her lips were painted that dangerous shade of red that warned men to stay away and made women lean in closer. But it was her eyes that pinned me to my chair ice blue, calculating, and somehow managing to undress me without her hands moving an inch. "Let's discuss this privately," she purred, her voice like velvet over steel. I should have run. Should have grabbed my briefcase and gotten the hell out of there. But something about the way she looked at me, like I was a puzzle she wanted to solve, made me nod and follow her out of that smoke-filled office. Her penthouse suite overlooked the entire city, floor-to-ceiling windows showing off the glittering lights below. It was the kind of place that screamed money and power, all clean lines and expensive art. Bailey moved through it like she owned the world, pouring vodka into crystal glasses with movements that were too graceful to be accidental. I'd expected threats, demands, maybe some intimidation tactics involving broken kneecaps or mysterious accidents. What I didn't expect was the way she handed me that glass, her fingers brushing mine just long enough to send electricity up my arm. "Mikhail's generous," she said, settling onto the white leather sofa beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something expensive and intoxicating. "But I'm the one who decides if you're worth the investment." My pulse started racing, and it wasn't from the vodka. "And how do I prove that?" Her lips curved into a smile that made my knees weak. "Start by taking off that adorable blazer." I hesitated. This wasn't what I'd planned. I'd come here to negotiate a business deal, not to whatever this was. But when Bailey moved closer, her hand trailing down my arm, every rational thought fled my brain. "I don't think this is how business meetings usually go," I managed to say. "Who said anything about business?" She whispered, and then she was pushing me back onto the bed, her mouth finding mine with a hunger that matched my own. It wasn't what I planned, but it was exactly what I wanted. The next morning, I woke up tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost more than my rent. Bailey was already up, standing by the window in a silk robe, her hair catching the morning light like spun gold. "About the club," she said without turning around, her voice back to business mode. "Mikhail's offer stands. But there are conditions." I sat up, suddenly very aware that I was naked in a stranger's bed, having just made the most reckless decision of my life. "What kind of conditions?" She turned then, and I saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there the night before. Something softer, more vulnerable. "You'll work with me closely. I'll be your liaison with Mikhail's organization." Liaison. I repeated, tasting the word. Is that what we're calling it? A smile played at the corners of her mouth. Among other things, over the next few weeks, Bailey became a constant presence in my life. She'd show up at my cramped studio apartment with coffee and croissants, spread blueprints across my kitchen table, and help me plan everything from the sound system to the cocktail menu. She had an eye for detail that impressed me and connections. That amazed me. But it was the quiet moments that got to me. The way she'd curl up beside me on my ancient couch, her head on my shoulder as we watched old movies. The way she'd hum while cooking dinner, moving around my tiny kitchen like she belonged there. The way she'd trace patterns on my skin and the dark, whispering stories about places she'd been and dreams she'd had. I was falling for her, hard and fast and completely against my better judgment. It was Bailey's phone that first made me suspicious. She'd get calls at all hours, stepping out onto the balcony to take them, her voice low and urgent. I'd catch fragments of conversations, code names, meeting times, references to the aberration. Who's Viper? I asked one night, having glimpsed the name on her phone screen. She froze, her entire body going rigid. You don't want to know. Maybe I do. She turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd known her, Bailey looked afraid. Nina, there are things about my life that you can't be part of. Things that could get you hurt. Like what? The fact that Mikhail's not just an investor. Her silence was answer enough. I'd suspected it, of course. No legitimate businessman conducted meetings in smoke-filled rooms with armed guards at the door, but I'd chosen to ignore the signs, to focus on my dream and the woman who was helping me achieve it. What exactly does he do? I pressed. Import and export, she said carefully. Of what, Nina? Of what, Bailey? She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw her make a decision. Things that don't go through customs. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Mikhail wasn't just connected to organized crime, he was organized crime. And Bailey was either his enforcer or his victim. Maybe both. I should have walked away. Should have taken my half-finished plans and found another investor, even if it meant starting over from scratch. But I couldn't. Not when Bailey would look at me with those blue eyes and promise that everything would be okay. Not when she'd hold me at night like I was the only thing anchoring her to the world. Instead, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed the way Bailey's hand would move instinctively to her hip when she was nervous, as if reaching for something that wasn't there. I noticed how she knew exactly where all the exits were in every room we entered. I noticed that she never, ever talked about her past. Where did you grow up? I asked her one evening as we worked on seating charts for the club. East Coast, she said without looking up. Where on the East Coast? Around. It was always like that. Vague answers. Deflections. Subject changes. Bailey Campbell was beautiful and brilliant and absolutely terrible at being a normal person. The night I found the gun in her purse, everything changed. I'd been looking for aspirin, we'd been working late, and I had a headache that wouldn't quit. Her bag was sitting on my kitchen counter, and I didn't think twice about rummaging through it. The gun was wrapped in a silk scarf, small and deadly and completely at odds with the lip gloss and designer wallet it was nestled against. Planning to shoot someone? I asked when she came out of the bathroom. She saw what I was holding and went very still. It's for protection. From who? From people who would hurt you to get to me? That's when I knew. Whatever Bailey was involved in, it was bigger than just working for Mikhail. She was scared, genuinely scared, and that terrified me more than any gun ever could. The raid happened on a Tuesday night. I was at the club site, supervising the installation of the sound system, when Bailey burst through the door looking like she'd seen a ghost. We have to go, she said, grabbing my arm. Now, what's wrong? There's going to be a raid tonight. Mikhail's entire operation is going down. I stared at her. How do you know that? She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw her make another decision, this one harder than the last. Because I'm the one who set it up. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I'm FBI, Nina. I've been undercover for 8 months, building a case against Mikhail's organization. FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the good guys. Except right now, Bailey didn't look like a guy. She looked like a woman who just destroyed everything she'd ever cared about. You're a cop, I said slowly. Federal agent. You lied to me. Yes. About everything. Not everything. She stepped closer, her hand reaching for mine. Not about how I feel about you. I jerked away. How you feel about me. You use me. You use my club, my dreams, my feelings. I know. To get close. To Mikhail. I know. And now you're telling me this. Why? Because you feel guilty? She flinched like I'd slapped her. Because I love you. Those 3 words hung in the air between us like a confession and accusation all at once. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly it hurt. If you love me, I said quietly, why didn't you tell me the truth? Because I was trying to protect you. From what? From this, she said, gesturing at the chaos around. U.S. From getting caught in the crossfire when everything went down. But it was too late for that. I was already caught, already in the crossfire, already bleeding from wounds I didn't even know I had. Mikhail's arrest made the front page of every newspaper in the city. The raid had been spectacular, FBI agents swarming the warehouse district, seizing millions in cash and drugs, arresting half the Russian mob in Salt Lake City. Bailey's testimony would put him away for life. My club was gone. The permits were tied up in legal red tape. The investors had scattered like leaves in a hurricane, and my dream was collateral damage in a federal investigation. Bailey tried to call me, left voicemails that I deleted without listening to. Sent. Flowers that I threw away. Showed up at my apartment with explanations that I didn't want to hear. I know you're angry, she said through my door. I know you hate me, but please, just let me explain. I didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because the truth was I didn't hate her. I hated that I still loved her. Weeks passed. The media frenzy died down. Mikhail was convicted, and Bailey disappeared back into whatever shadowy world federal agents inhabited when they weren't pretending to be someone else. I found a job bartending at a hotel downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me busy enough that I didn't have time to think about blue eyes and silk scarves and the way Bailey's laugh could light up a room, except I thought about her anyway. Every night, every morning, every quiet moment when my defenses were down, I thought about the way she'd hold me, like I was something precious and fragile. I thought about the stories she'd tell me about her childhood, the ones that were probably lies but felt true in the moment. I thought about the gun in her purse and the fear in her eyes and the way she'd said she loved me like it was the most important thing in the world. Maybe it was. Bailey showed up at my apartment on a Thursday night, 3 months after the raid. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, holding a badge in one hand and a small velvet box in the other. She looked different. Tired. Maybe, or maybe just honest for the first time since I'd known her. I quit, she said. Quit what? The bureau. My job. Everything. I stared at her. Why? Because I realized something. She stepped closer, and I saw that her hands were shaking. I realized that I'd rather have a real life with you than a fake life without you. Bailey, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed everything you worked for. She dropped to her knees right there in my doorway and opened the velvet box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect, but I also know that I love you. Really love you. Not the fake love of an undercover agent, but the real, messy, complicated love of a woman who wants to spend the rest of her life making up for the mistakes she's made. I looked down at her, this woman who'd torn my world apart and was now offering to rebuild it, and felt something crack open in my chest. You lied to me, I said. Yes. You used me. Yes. You destroyed my dreams. Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. But I also fell in love with you. Really, truly, completely. Fell in love with you. And if you'll let me, I want to help you build new dreams. Better dreams. Dreams that we can share. I thought about all the reasons I should say no. All the ways she'd hurt me, all the trust she'd broken, all the futures she'd stolen. But I also thought about the way she looked at me that first night, like I was a puzzle she wanted to solve. The way she'd curl up beside me on the couch, her head on my shoulder. The way she'd hum while cooking dinner, moving around my kitchen like she belonged there. Maybe she did belong there. Get up, I said. She looked up at me, hope and fear warring in her eyes. Get up, I repeated, holding out my hand. We need to talk. We talked all night. Really talked, maybe for the first time since we'd known each other. Bailey told me about her childhood, about growing up in foster care and never having a place to call home. She told me about joining the FBI, about the cases that haunted her and the loneliness that ate at her soul. She told me about meeting me and how it had changed everything. I was supposed to get close to you to get to McHale, she said. That was the plan. But then I actually got to know you, and everything became complicated. When did you know? I asked. When did you know you left me? She thought for a moment. The night you fell asleep on my couch watching Casablanca, you were wearing this old t-shirt and flannel pajama pants. And you had your hair in a messy bun, and you looked so dot real, so beautiful and real, and nothing like the life I'd been living. I looked at you and thought, this is what I want. This is what I've been looking for, but you didn't tell me. I couldn't. Not then. The operation was too important. Too many people would get hurt if I screwed it up. And I thought maybe I could have both. The job and you. I thought I could keep you safe and still do what I had to do, but you couldn't. No, she said quietly. I couldn't. And in the end, I had to choose. So I chose you. It wasn't that simple, of course. Trust doesn't rebuild itself overnight, and love doesn't conquer all. But it was a start. Bailey kept her promise. She'd quit the FBI, cashed in her retirement fund, and sold everything she owned. She presented me with a check for $200,000 and a business plan that took my breath away. I want to invest in us, she said. In your club. In our future, in the life we could have together. The new club was different from my original vision. Smaller, more intimate, focused on live music and craft cocktails rather than flash and spectacle. We found a space in the Arts District, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and soaring ceilings. Bailey handled the business side while I focused on the creative aspects, and slowly, carefully, we built something beautiful together. We built other things too. Trust through hundreds of small conversations and tiny acts of faith. Understanding through late night talks and early morning confessions. Love through the choice to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. The ring stayed in its velvet box for months. Not because I didn't want to wear it, but because I needed to be sure. Sure that Bailey was who she said she was now. Sure that I could trust her with my heart again. Sure that we were building something real and lasting. She proposed to me on the night of our club's grand opening. We'd been working for months to get everything perfect, and finally, it was ready. The space was filled with soft lighting, and the sound of jazz, with people laughing and dancing and celebrating. Our dream had come true. Dance with me, Bailey said, taking my hand as the band played a slow, sultry version of the way you look tonight. We moved together on the small dance floor, surrounded by the life we'd built together. Bailey was wearing a black dress that made her look like a 1940s movie star, and I was in a white tuxedo that had been my grandmother's. "Do you remember what you asked me the first night we met?" she said, her lips close to my ear. I asked you how I could prove I was worth investing in. And do you remember what I said? I smiled. You told me to take off my blazer. Before that, I thought back through all the lies and revelations and pain to that first night when everything had begun. You said you were the one who decided if I was worth it. I was wrong, she said, spinning me slowly. You were never the one who had to prove anything. I was. She stopped dancing and dropped to one knee, right there in the middle of our club, surrounded by our friends and customers and the life we'd built together. Nina Walker, you're worth everything. Worth the truth, worth the risk, worth changing my entire life for. Will you marry me? This time, when she opened the ring box, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said, and the club erupted in cheers and applause. We got married 6 months later at a small ceremony at the club. Bailey wore a white dress that made her look like an angel, and I wore a navy suit that made me feel like I could conquer the world. We'd written our own vows, and when Bailey spoke, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Nemia, she said, her voice steady and sure, I promise to never lie to you again. I promise to choose you every day, even when it's hard. I promise to be the woman you fell in love with, the real woman, not the character I played or the badge I wore. I promise to build a life with you that's worthy of the love you've shown me. When it was my turn, I looked at this woman who'd turned my world upside down and somehow made it better in the process. Bailey, I said, I promise to trust you with my heart, even when it's scary. I promise to choose love over fear, hope over hurt, and us over everything else. I promise to build dreams with you that are bigger and better than anything I could imagine alone. We kissed as the sun set over the city, casting golden light through the windows of our club. It was perfect. We were perfect, not because we were flawless, but because we were real. A year later, I'm standing in our club, watching Bailey work the room like the natural hostess she's become. She's wearing a red dress that hugs her curves and makes every person in the room wish they could take her home. But she's mine, and I'm hers, and that's the most beautiful thing in the world. Mrs. Campbell Walker, she says, sliding up behind me and wrapping her arms around my waist. Punny for your thoughts. I lean back into her embrace, feeling the solid warmth of her body against mine. Just thinking about how we got here. Regrets? None, I say, and I mean it. Not a single one. She spins me around to face her, and I see the love in her eyes that I once thought was fake, but now know is the truest thing in my life. Good, she says, because I have something to tell you. What? She grins, that same dangerous smile that first caught my attention in Mikhail's office. I just got off the phone with that investor from Portland, the one who's interested in franchising our concept, and we're going to be very busy in the next few months. I look around at our club, at the life we've built together, at the future stretching out before us like a promise. Bring it on, I say. Bailey laughs and kisses me, right there in front of everyone, and I taste our future on her lips. It tastes like champagne and possibility and the kind of love that survives betrayal and comes out stronger on the other side. 5 years later, we own 3 clubs in different cities, employ over 100 people, and have been featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. But more importantly, we've built a life together that's based on truth and trust, and the kind of love that makes everything else possible. Bailey never went back to law enforcement. She says she found something better than catching bad guys. She found home. And I found something better than my original dream. I found a dream that was big enough for both of us. Sometimes late at night when the club is closed and we're counting receipts, I think about that first meeting in Mikhail's office, about the woman who walked through the door and changed everything, about the lies that led to truth and the betrayal that led to love. Still think I'm the villain? Bailey asks, catching me in one of these reflective moments. I pull her close, breathing in the scent of her perfume and feeling the weight of her wedding ring against my back. Oh, you are, I say, echoing what? I told her on our opening night, you're just mine now. She laughs, and the sound fills our empty club with warmth and light and the promise of tomorrow. And that's how our story ends. Not with a bang, but with a laugh. Not with perfection, but with truth. Not with a fairy tale, but with real love between two real women who chose each other despite everything. Or maybe that's the most perfect fairy tale of all.